show you using the 1/4 inch foot, and we're going to activate the guide beam. So I'm going to snap off my straight stitch foot and snap on the 1/4 inch foot. Now the 1/4 inch foot is another foot that has only that single hole needle opening. So again, you can really only use a straight stitch with this particular foot. So we'll snap that on. I love that the 1/4 inch foot comes with the Unity too. There we go. And now I'm just gonna pull my thread out of the way. And this time I'm going to activate the needle guide beam. We haven't talked about that yet in this video. The needle guide beam icon is right here. And when I activate that needle guide beam, I automatically get this beam on the bed of my fabric. And I love it because it helps me to sew straight. It extends the lines. Sometimes you follow the lines on the bobbin cover to stitch, but it extends that line a couple of inches so that you can really easily sew straight. It also helps me to sew point to point for creating half square triangles without having to mark my lines. So what we want to do here is envision that we are creating half square triangles. And when you sew half square triangles, you're always sewing 1/4 inch from the center marking from point to point on 2 squares of fabric. And when you do that, you end up with what we call 2 half square triangles. So the first step to create this is we want to move the needle guide beam to the very center position, or 1/4 inch from the needle. And it's real easy to do. We have a 1/4 inch marking right on the bed of the machine, and we have a 1/4 inch marking in the flange on the 1/4 inch foot. That's exactly a 1/4 inch from the center needle position. Here on the screen, we can touch the plus sign to move that guide beam. And as I touch that, I can see the guide beam moving both on my screen and on the bed of the machine. And we're simply going to move it until the guide beam lines up with the 1/4 inch marking on the machine. A little further, just like that. And now, as I sew, I'm going to position the guide beam right along the point-to-point portion of my fabric. So that's how we're going to stitch. So I'll place that, and I'll use the guide on the foot kind of as a visual aid too, and just make sure that the point of my squares are right underneath the flange on my 1/4 inch foot. And now as I stitch, I'm just going to go straight and make sure that the guide beam is pointing directly into the bottom corner of my fabric. Now, sometimes people feel a little bit stressed trying to follow that guide beam. Just take your time, relax about it, and again, just kind of watch where you're going. Instead of staring up here at the needle, just keep an eye to make sure that that guide beam, as you stitch, is headed directly into the corner of your squares. Okay, so I've stitched 1/2. Take that away, and we can see that we are 1/4 inch from the center axis through my square. And now I'm simply going to rotate the square around, and we'll repeat the same process, sewing 1/4 inch from the opposite side of center. So again, we're going to position the fabric so that the flange is right on the point, and the guide beam is headed directly toward the corner of my squares. Cut the thread. And now we can see that we have 2 rows of stitching that are exactly 1/2 inch apart, 1/4 inch from left of center and 1/4 inch from right of center. And now we can cut directly between those 2 lines to reveal our 2 half square triangle units. So you could cut using a rotary cutter or your nice sharp pair of scissors. And we're just going right down the center line. Now, cutting exactly straight and perfect, not super important because we've already sewn perfectly straight. So there we have our 2 triangles. When we open them up, we have a perfect half square triangle unit. So there's one, you give it a little finger press or a good press. And here is the other. So it's the perfect and easiest way to create half square triangle units without having to spend lots of time measuring and marking all of those sewing lines.